vacuum pulls the diaphragm, which is attached to the inlet capsule, opens the valve in the inlet capsule to allow chlorine to pass through. Loss of vacuum should be a spring and diaphragm then that shuts that valve.
What happens is you've got a diaphragm that goes in between the front body and back body right here. It's 8.5 inches in diameter. You have a vent here that's open to the front of the body, and your vacuum is open to the back of the body. You've got 29.5 inches of pressure, atmospheric pressure, that comes in the vent and loads onto the front of the cylinder. When there's no vacuum, the atmospheric pressure equals on both sides, stays there. When the vacuum goes on, the vacuum pulls a vacuum on, and the atmospheric pressure pushes the diaphragm onto the inlet capsule, opening up the inlet capsule until they get chlorine by pressure is here, and it pulls the chlorine from the pressure side to the vacuum side and out into the system. So that's where the vent line is very, very important. If it gets plugged or anything else, you don't have atmospheric pressure, and you'll have a bouncing ball all the time, or you won't get proper feed rates or anything else like that. So the plastic side is the vacuum side, the metal side is the pressure side. At 60-degree temperature on a full chlorine cylinder, how much pressure is inside of a ton cylinder?
I don't know.
80 psi. And there's a two fuse plugs on a ton. What temperature in Fahrenheit does the fuse plug?
170, 160?
165. And again, 165, it's a malleable lead that melts. And again, when a fuse plug melts, people think all the chlorine is going to be released into the environment. That's not true, because chlorine boils at 40 degrees below zero, changes from a liquid to a gas. And it will release, and then it will freeze up, release, freeze up, release. Years ago, Menasha Water Utility had a ton that they broke the cylinder valve right off the cylinder. And it was open to the environment for 8 hours. And only a full ton, and only 375 pounds leaked out.
Freezing and dying.
Yep. And so what on this is, right now I'm going to remove the back yoke assembly. This is the pressure side. Chlorine comes in, goes down, and through this tube here down and passed up. And there's a heater on this that stops when in the cylinder it can be liquid. And we want to draw gas, so we don't want to draw liquid in here and pull liquid into the system. It'll freeze it up. So that's why we always have a heater on the ton in case the inverted whip. And my bolts, I take them apart, put them in a little hydrochloric acid and water to clean them up. These are cadmium plated bolts and screws. So that's why they can stand up to the chlorine. That's the pressure side, and this is the vacuum side. The vacuum then has
I'm also going to take a look at that
Yep.
filter in there.
on a 500 pound potassium, there's a 90 here that delivers the chlorine coming in to the remote meter assembly. So there's a larger orifice to pull that 500 pounds through it. Little plastic screws, and it's the worst. No, so we can put that right down there.
Just hold that
Faceplate on.
plate under.
So the acid eats away any corrosion that's
Yeah,
on there?
and usually it's a green buildup. And when moisture comes into a vacuum regulator, when, say you take it off the ton, you've got any residual, the moisture goes into the body and it will turn it green inside the body. This is the meter plug, meter flow tube plug. It basically holds the gaskets together for the flow tube. This flow tube is made out of crystal glass. That's why it can stand up to the chlorine gas. That flow tube right there is roughly about $1,200.
Go over there and look at what he's taking out and then come back. Just like, if you get to a point where you're not seeing it.
So what's that ball made out of that doesn't ever get eaten away?
It's a plastic. It's a plastic. This has got your back body, your front body, with the diaphragm bolt assembly.
So this one is pressure and that one is vacuum, correct?
Well, this would be the gas side. This would be the atmospheric side. Okay. There's on a vacuum regulator. There should not be any quote pressure in this area. Otherwise, it pulls. This is the O-ring that goes onto the vent button. It'll push it forward, and that will release the button from there. And there's a hole right straight through that opens to the atmospheric, and that's where your chlorine will come out the vent. Any pressure will come out the vent.
So if that gasket was leaking by, that's when you would see the chlorine coming out of the vent?
Yes. Yes.
I've seen that before.
The springs are made out of titanium silver. That little spring is $60. That spring right there is $85. So they are expensive like that. The diaphragm is basically a plastic. It's a double layer. O-ring and your titanium silver shaft that comes out.
Is the hydro units, are they gonna be exactly the same?
Exactly the same, correct. The only difference between the hydro and the Capital Control Severn Trent is the plastic that it's made out of. All the other valves, the O-rings, gaskets, everything are out of the same material. It's just the body. We repped Capital Controls for 43 years. And we were after them to go to a different material, because this dries and all of a sudden you'll get cracks at bolts and your container, your compression fittings here. And basically this front body is $975 just for the body. The back body is another $825. So it comes down, if you get cracks in either one of your body, it comes down where it's almost time to buy a new one. Hydro, with their machined, these are molded, they're machined PVC. The bodies are guaranteed for the life of the unit, or 25 years. That's what life is, something like that on a system. So you got your back body, your front body, your diaphragm. This is called a relief spring cover, and your flow tube body. Now, this is the pressure side. Now there's a lead gasket here and a lead gasket here. Now, with tons, if you're taking them off and you don't handle them properly, if you just drop it, you'll damage that lead gasket, and the next time you hook it up, you're going to have gas coming out between this body here. So when you take them apart, you got to be careful on how you handle it.
Could have a leak there, and the vacuum regulator isn't going to prevent.
Nope. It's going to come out by pressure. Oh yeah. I mean, I've had systems where the people have taken this apart and forgot to put the lead gasket back in and turned it on, and the chlorine is coming out like hell, and they run, and then they call us to come in and shut the ton down. Oh yes. I've been in the field 44 years, and I've been overcome by gas 9 times. But that was days. When these guys had WT systems, all pressure side. And you would come in and you would have to service it, and you would break a connection, hit it with a crescent wrench, and run. And wait for the room to evacuate of the chlorine. Nowadays, you only have usually one or two pressure points. Before there, I mean, they had all whips going to the tons, and the whips going to actually a pipe, and then to the pipe through into the chlorine room, and then they had 3 V800 cabinets that I used to come and service. And it was fun though. And come in and loosen, hit the fitting, and then go outside or come in here and wait until the chlorine evacuated enough so that I could go back and work on the system. Now,
Need like a 3/8 inch.
no, I had a little flat stock with a hook on it. And
We got those
I got
pullers
some
and stuff.
picks.
just give me a sec here. Be right back.
Put her on pause.
Right.
Pause.
Pause it, buddy. Pause it.
Huh?
You have to start a new video.
No, you don't.
Yeah, you do.
Leave it.
Really?
What kind of technology is that?
Why would you have to do that?
Want me to show you?
No, I don't, because I want to start a whole new one. Well,
It's just like an
Isn't there
iPhone.
pause?
Doesn't need a tripod if you want, but if you stop it, it makes a new video. It's just like an iPhone.
we can edit it later, right? We can stop it on the edit.
Ready? That's again, sterling silver filter, and that goes like that. It's solid from this down up. Now, sometimes what I do is I'll hook this up to compressed air and blow it out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if I look inside and I see quite a bit of buildup, I'll actually take this and soak it in hydrochloric acid and water overnight. Then I'll rinse it out. Then I'll put the heater on and let it get nice and warm and boil out all the moisture and everything. And so what I do, it's not that bad in there. Sometimes when you get them, especially when they're being taken off vacuum regulators and then stored and then put them back on, this area can get pretty well built up. And what I do then, this is your area where you got your lead gasket. I always take steel wool in a flat gasket, screwdriver,
Clean up all the
and
shingles.
clean up all that area. In this center area here, there's two ribs, and you want that to be cleaned up in those two center ribs. The two center ribs are right in there. What happens is over a period of time, from lead gaskets, it can build up debris from lead gaskets, and it can cause a less of a seal area.
Would you say the chlorine does travel down that heater
Yes,
leg?
yes. There's a
There's a-
pipe within a pipe, okay? The chlorine comes in and goes down the inside of there's a pipe inside,
Yeah.
goes down, then comes
Comes
out
up
the
and-
outside and back up. And in some tons, over a period of time, that are taken on and off and not put right on, this can build up in material, and all of a sudden you can't get the chlorine from this down here and back up, and all of a sudden you put it on the ton cylinder, you can't get any chlorine out of the ton.
So that is removable then, but, wow.
It really is. It is not. What they do is it's threaded, but they put a thread binder on it, and they tighten it. Then they heat it, and that binder fuses the threads here and here. So you never want to take this apart. It's a one assembly. You don't take it apart. And
So once it's dirty, what do you gotta just get a different one, or?
to get a different one or clean it up, use acid to clean it up and like that. And I've taken them apart and cleaned them up and got them back working. It's not an overnight thing. Like say, if this came into me into my shop, I'd clean it all up. I'd be taking this all apart. I'd be wire brushing the whole outside down, and I'd be painting the whole yoke assembly. This whole yoke assembly, I'd be cleaning up. That's what I do. I try to, when it comes back to me, if the customer, so I'll ask the customer if they want it repainted. If they don't, because it adds about another $300 in cost to the repair. But I normally, at least this portion up here, I'll leave this in okay if it looks okay. But this portion up here, I'll either sandblast or wire brush and clean it completely up and repaint it. And so this is the called the inlet capsule assembly, and this is where it converts from gas to pressure. Pressure to, and you can see that filter floss is pretty dirty in there.
Mm-hmm.
And what you do is take that filter floss. Now that filter floss should be white in color. And filter floss in there. Then there's a silver filter. That's solid silver. And then you've got your filter stop. That's where, if I had my little hook, I can go in there and pull it directly out. Then there's called the valve stem. Now this inlet capsule assembly is $825 when it's brand new. You've got your what's called the vent button, your retainer, your spring, your valve stem, and your O-ring. And your, oh, excuse me, and your adapter meter. There's an O-ring. And, oh, okay. Anybody got a knife?
Yep.
Pulls out a 6-inch.
Kind of explain that a little bit, how what you're doing there.
I'm removing the valve stem, the valve plug. It's a Teflon stem. I gotta,
Is that threaded in or?
it's pushed in.
Okay.
What, like a punch or something?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's what it looks like when it's new.
I've got one, Paul.
That's what it looks like when it's brand new. And what I'm trying to do is get it. Oh, okay.
Want a hammer?
Usually it comes there. I should have brought my whole bag in, but I figure these guys.
You want to put something here? Is that gonna pop out?
Take it right out. Take off the lead gasket.
Are these the same size lead gaskets that we use when we put on the yoke every time we switch?
Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, you can just see the buildup inside there. I don't know. See the buildup? That's what a new one should look like. And one thing with hydro that Capital controls, these are silver plated. This is a Hastelloy C, so it's not plated. It's a solid Hastelloy C adapter plate. So what I do then is I take my steel wool, get ya?
Yeah.
Keep on.
At what point would you say you need a new
What?
inlet capsule?
Well, okay, I'll just show you this one once I get it cleaned up. If you see brass, if you don't see the silver coating, you see the brass, that's the time that it should be replaced. That's the main differences with hydro is when we were looking for another supplier of the gas chlorination system, hydro was small enough to willing to listen to us, and we as a supplier of gas chlorine and that, at least they allowed us to say what we wanted, and that's what they made. And like that, they made hydro what they're the owner of hydro basically worked for Capital Controls, Severn Trent, about 35 years ago. He left, started up his own company, and it used to be called Modern Chlorine. He ran the company until his two sons, both of them were in the Air Force, and they were pilots. And both of those came out of service. And the dad basically gave the company to the sons and changed the name from Modern to Hydro. And what it came down to is the Capital Controls 200 series, this is this, and the Hydro 300 series is a direct copy. Measurements, parts, O-ring, material, the only difference is the body. That's the only difference. And because at that time, Severn Trent did not increase the patent on the unit, so he ended up getting it. Now, you can, if you look inside that, you can see the brass. You can see the brass in there. There's no more plating.
You rubbed all the plating off.
Well, but even with cleaning like that, see, if I were to put that in right now with brass, with chlorine, you'd end up with pit marks in it, and that the brass that basically broke off would get into the inlet capsule assembly and cause you to vent. So that's why most of the time in capital controls, normally we can usually get one rebuild out of the inlet capsule assembly, out of the adapter plate, and have to put a new one in. What do you need?
Really? How are you going to clean that out?
Well, that would be hydrochloric acid and water, but that's not that bad.
Is this silver plated, just like the
Right, yep.
capsule?
But this body here is not made out of brass.
Oh.
It's made out of a Hastel alloy with the plating, so it's not a brass. Now, if I took time out, I would soak this with hydrochloric acid and water and clean it up. What I can do,
You got a tray or something?
I can take a 5-gallon pail.
Oh,
I take a 5-gallon pail, fill it up, put a gallon of hydrochloric acid, water in it, and then what I use is an aquarium pump, and I pump.
that way you're getting,
Yep, it's not just standing. I put the aquarium discharge right here, so it has to go in and out.
you're like reversing the flow through it.
Yep. And that's what I do. But what we can do is I can take this apart, I can show putting it back together, and we can then take this and kind of clean it up. Okay, Paul?
Yeah, I think we got it apart. We should probably
Okay.
address it, right?
So, this is titanium and silver. This is $185. Right there. So, it's dirty. Simply take your steel wool,
You guys going to that? Yeah, you can go ahead.
Little vacuum.
clean up nice and like that. And I put my vent button on. This one I just worry about just the end of it. I don't have to do the whole thing. Just got to get where it comes in contact with the O-ring. Clean it up.
And this plug's probably impossible to get
Yep,
out.
that's another. It's
You don't-
yep.
yeah.
That is made. That plug right there is for a pressure gauge. It comes out with a 90-degree out, street 90, and then there's a pressure gauge, diaphragm protected gauge. This yoke assembly is used for a wall mount unit, say a 2,000 pound, 2,000, 5,000, and 10,000 pound. and this yoke assembly can be done, and it's got a pressure gauge and then everything on it. So I've got my there.
Now, is this the hydro kit?
Yep, this is the hydro
That-
kit.
that,
It's the same thing as
KTH 500 VRT? KTH 500 VRT.
then there's OV11 011 O-ring right there. That goes right over the top like that. No lubrication, just a little bit of spit.
Distilled water also work?
Yeah, still.
You don't want to get it too wet in there, though.
No.
I mean,
What is my...
What are you looking for?
Oh, I had a cylinder. Here it is.
Now, what's that you just used?
That's it's a plunger and like that I basically used to drive that through.
so it's got a seat.
It's got a seat down there inside.
Looks like part of a screwdriver.
Right on. Yep. That's what I used. Grind it and polish it down so it went inside. Again, like I say, I know I've done this for 40-some years, so I know all the O-rings and everything else
You
by
mentioned
heart.
what that O-ring is? Is
That's a 112 inlet plug. You put it on, basically thread it on. Like that, and it comes through the other side like that.
Yep.
And this O-ring goes on like this.
What's that O-ring number?
That's a 212. Then we put our, and I always wiped off my screwdriver going into this here. And I've got my small washer. That just stops that there's a retainer shelf that doesn't allow that retainer, this area here, to go past. It goes like this. And my vent button, I press down.
Notice you grab the button initially with this.
Yep. Yep.
So, I mean, if that gets a little,
Chewed on the side.
Yeah.
And it's just where you want the O-ring. The O-ring comes in contact right here, right in here. That's where you want it to clean up on that. So then what we do is got the filter stop. This goes in next. It's a piece of Teflon.
did you get that?
Yep.
Right? Oh,
Yep.
okay.
It's a filter stop that gets dropped down inside. Then the new filter screen.
Yeah, check it, just so you get the feel, so you get
Can
the
I,
feel
can I
of
get a
it.
feel of it?
Yeah, just see how it,
Well,
No.
okay. No,
No.
just
Your
just
finger.
hand tight.
yeah,
Just-
Oh.
but
screwdriver.
put your,
But to break it loose,
you break it loose, you gotta use your,
but,
yep.
but you don't.
Nope, just
hand-
tight, hand tight.
Okay.
Then the filter screen goes on top of this like this. And you can take this, drop it down, and it basically creases the filter right on top. Then you basically take a small amount of filter floss, not that much. Put a little spit on it. Make it into a 1/4 inch ball.
What's the charge for the
It's high charge. Put it in like that. There's your inlet capsule.
I
Now,
like that tool for putting the floss in. It kind of pushes it around the edges.
right on. Yep. So now what I do is I put it in my the guys took my
It's coming out of there crooked.
got a brand new one on my workbench this morning, on last week, and guys, someone grabbed it. What we do is bring these in and then we sandblast them, and we repaint them. And I just had about 3 of them that I had sandblasted and repainted. And someone wanted one. There we go. And the lead gasket. That. Plug it right.
Let's see. I think that should be a 110. Be higher amperage.
minimize it. And basically take a little bit of water. Okay, if it was leaking, it would show it coming up,
Bubbles there.
and bubbles and everything else like that. So it shows it. No